Welcome to the Strategic Marketer Podcast, where we talk about strategies, tactics, and practical steps to help you become a more strategic marketer. I'm your host, Joseph Lewin, and in today's conversation, I'm speaking with Greg Mischio. Greg is the owner and chief strategist at Winbound, a marketing agency that focuses on manufacturers. We discuss how it's marketing's responsibility to communicate with sales and truly understand the challenges that the sales team is facing, and get on calls with customers to understand the challenges and pain points of the customer, and then create content that helps your sales team win. Greg has a process where he helps companies create a digital twin of their sales team. It's a really interesting approach, and I'm excited for you to join into our conversation. Greg, are marketing and sales two sides of the same coin?
I think they're not the silos that every organization seems to make them out to be. I think they are definitely interrelated and there's a ton of overlap. Perhaps the biggest difference, though, is that the marketing can exist to drive inbound leads to the sales team. But essentially, especially in today's day and age, there's so much overlap on the marketing side between paid and organic traffic that we really need sales and marketing to work hand in hand.
Yeah, so I know in a lot of B2B companies, the marketing department can end up just becoming kind of an arm of the sales department, or on the flip side, especially at larger companies, the marketers don't want to have anything to do with sales. So if you're talking to a business owner that has a marketing team that's really kind of more just part of their sales team, what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, if you're going to make your marketing team make cold calls and do things like that, you might as well just call them your sales team. But if you've got the marketing team as a support mechanism and an extension of the sales team in terms of helping the sales team reach out into different channels and to help communicate the brand and the messaging, then yes, then the marketing serves as an extension of the sales team. I think that the big problem is that marketers start out over here and sales team is over here. And to me, the marketing team's got to take the initiative and they have to move over to the sales team because, well, first of all, the sales team's closest to the customer. And I think that's really where the marketing team needs to be. So you got to get as close to the customer as you can. The sales team is your obvious conduit. So you get over there, and plus, let's face it, folks, I mean, the sales team is generating the business. You can have a company without a marketing team, but you cannot have a company without a sales team. So you got to understand the reality of the situation, that if you're not supporting them and driving sales, the role of the marketing team is just going to dwindle and be diminished in the eyes of the management team. So I think the marketing team needs to get in there and support the sales team first and foremost, kind of on that bottom of the funnel content and the marketing right there. But then I think they can also explain and expand out the role of communications and bringing people into that funnel and bringing them in closer to the sales team, and maybe help the sales team understand some things that on their own they're not entirely aware of and not able to access. And by that, I mean a great sales team, like Mike Weinberg wrote in his book, New Sales Simplified. A great salesperson will be focused on what are my customers' problems, right? I need to start out with that before I can start talking about my products and how I'm going to solve them. That's where the marketing team, they can help the sales team identify those problems. They can create content that we can use in different channels to get on their to reach out to the prospects, and then they can bring them into the sales team.
So if a marketing person wants to get closer to the sales team and they go, okay, I can see that they're having customer calls all day. They're closer to the customer. How can they start to bridge that gap? And what are some of the benefits of them having a closer relationship with people on the
Well,
sales
the
team?
first thing we do is we start out with the marketing plan, for example. And the first thing, the first part of our marketing plan is to set up the sales story. And again, Mike Weinberg's got a great example of it. The sales story, first and foremost, should be what are you in the eyes of your customer? And then what are the problems that you're solving? And
Hmm.
if you reach out to your sales team and you ask them, what are those answers? Can you tell me that? As well as other members in your organization. That's a perfect way. I mean, right away, you're getting input from them. And then you say to the sales team, you know what? How about we call three of your top customers or even some prospects and let's validate what you just told us. Let's make
Hmm.
sure that what you're saying in terms of what the problems are for the customers and then what you think makes us different as a company, let's validate it. Let's make sure that they agree
Hmm.
with you. And if you can come back to them and say, you're right on the money, or you know what, they totally disagreed with you. Here's what you should be saying. Not only are you showing them that, you're listening to them and you're responsive to them, but then you're bringing them some helpful data that might help them improve their own sales.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah, and I've seen that, especially getting more into. So you work in the manufacturing space, um, and I've been marketing to engineers for a little while, and in the same space, and I've definitely seen the value of connecting with my sales guy, for the one particular software I've been focused on, and yeah, I mean, huge value in talking with him. He knows. First of all, I had no idea anything about engineering before I started at the
Right.
company, so he was able to help me get up to speed because he's an engineer, and we worked through that, and he became somebody that's editing my content for the engineering perspective. So
Perfect.
that was even more valuable on that
Perfect.
side. But also, he's spent a lot of time talking to customers, and so my first few months, I was jumping on almost every customer call that he would have, both actual customers and prospects, and just listening in. And then I was able to help him think through some of the challenges to the language he was using. Like, I was able to hear things from a different
Right.
perspective and help him refine his language. But then he was able to help me really quickly understand what the challenges are of the customer. And we were able to really refine the sales and marketing process by working together. So I completely agree with you. I mean, absolutely, want to validate that my experience in the same area that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, just a couple great things you just said there. One, you're collaborating. Okay, so immediately both the output on your end and on your salesperson's side is going to get better. Um, and the second thing is that you are hearing things and able to translate things maybe to the customer's perspective as a storyteller and as a person who is a professional communicator. And it's your job to simplify and reach people on an emotional basis if possible, but really to tell it in a concise story. So you're bringing that to
yeah.
him, and I'm sure he's going to appreciate that. In the same respect, he's calling you and pointing out that, technically you're not getting it. So that's even going to make your message more accurate and more powerful in that you're picking up the details that are so critical to catch the eye of the engineers because the engineers traditionally hate marketing fluff. They
Yeah.
are adverse to it. But if you can bring in really solid details that speak to them in a concise way, that's a win win.
Yeah, it's kind of funny on that note. I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn posting about marketing content. And then I had a little stint there where I was posting about engineering content, and I started to go, well, maybe that's not quite the personal brand I want to go for. But in the time I posted, I got way more traction still to this day on my engineering content that I published that was, from content that I had written than I have on any of the marketing stuff. So I do think there's a lot of opportunity when you do clarify things and you simplify some of these ideas. I think a lot of yeah, some people would get in the comments. I I think you get more trolls in the engineering space probably than you do just out in the general market, because they like to be particular and they have their own opinion, even if the engineer sitting next to them might totally disagree with them. They'll fight about it. But people wanted an easier way to describe some of the things that they've had a hard time describing, and so it was anyway. Just pretty cool to see
plus
that.
You have less competition, right? I mean, how many engineers are out there really posting a lot of stuff and a lot of content? Not a lot, but if you're out there sharing engineering information, even though you're writing it as a marketer, it's just less competition. I mean, there's so many content marketers out there, and we're out there yammering, around the clock. So yeah.
This week's episode of The Strategic Marketer is brought to you by the Brand Compass course. If you're looking to take your marketing services side hustle to the next level, the Brand Compass course is for you. In the course, you're going to learn how to identify your ideal customers and narrow down to serve a niche market. Then you're going to learn how to productize your offering so that it's easier for customers to understand exactly what you do for them. And then you're going to put all of this information into a one-page messaging guide. That way you can use your customer's language to speak exactly to their pain points and problems every single time. Check out the show notes for a link to the course. Yeah, I mean, half the posts on LinkedIn are about how to post better on LinkedIn. And I'm like,
exactly.
Well, first of all, you have 5 engagements on your post. So maybe
Yeah.
maybe you're not the first person I'll go to for, who's engaging on LinkedIn, but it's just kind of funny to see people talking about, that's kind of the primary thing I feel like I see on LinkedIn a lot, especially, I think you're getting less so, but then as soon as you go a little bit deeper than LinkedIn marketing, there's people on the platform who really want to hear more technical information. And like you're saying, I think the more niche you go, so if you go away from marketing and into one of these other fields, there are actually people super active on the platform, and there's not that many people posting. So there's definitely opportunity there. But yeah, just to kind of bring it back. One point I want to say though, as marketers in a technical space like this, I think it's important to take a step back and say, we have an opportunity to really go super deep on the subject matter that we're talking about. So instead of just learning about marketing, it's also our job to learn about whatever field we're in. And if you can go ultra deep into this space and you go to some conferences and learn about what the big players are saying is happening in the industry, and then you read some articles, but then you go to those articles and you look in the footnotes and you keep reading them until you figure out, okay, where was that source material actually from? Because usually a few articles will kind of talk about the same thing, and then finally you land on, okay, this was actually the original PDF that came from the Department of Defense, and it was research that was done. And so then you read that, and there's going to be so few people in the space that have actually read that underlying research document. And if you get that, you read through it, you start to become knowledgeable about it, and you can really quickly start sharing things that even people who are, I'm going to just say, people who are way smarter than me, I've been able to educate them on things because I'm going really deep in a certain area that the general people don't, general engineers don't know about. And I think that's not just true, just to kind of make it applicable to other people in different industries. That's not just true in engineering. It's true in any B2B environment. There's going to be a lot of area where if you focus on learning not just the marketing, but also, go really deep on the subject matter, it can really go a long way.
Well, it sounds like too, what you're doing is you're bringing clarity to the situation. The more you learn, that's where the true insights come from. And then you can communicate those clearly in that concise manner we were talking about. I mean, we constantly talk to our writers about clarity and the need to just, you don't need to write more. You just need to write less, especially in web pages, and very clearly and concisely. And the only way you can do that is if you really understand the subject matter. So, kudos to you for going the extra mile, but it's really the differentiator. And if you're going to do effective content marketing, you have to go that deep. You really have to understand your client as, almost better than they know themselves in some respects. But yeah, you have to have that in-depth knowledge, because that's where all the great nuggets come from. I mean, that's where the great ad campaigns and that creativity can really take hold if you completely understand what you're talking about. It's like making an inside joke, or your sense of humor.
Absolutely.
That's where that comes from, is really understanding the language and then being able to play with it.
Yeah, and I think also, if you're in the B2C space, um, you're able to create a campaign or something that gets somebody's attention and can convince them to buy. But in the B2B space, you're talking about a lot of times months or even years for a buying cycle, depending on the situation. I mean, I think under 30 days is probably going to be pretty rare in most B2B B2B sales cycles. So then um, you really do have to go deeper. You really have to understand the challenges that your customer is facing, not just with your own product, but beyond your product. What the areas that touch your product. How does that relate? So you had a really interesting perspective on how to get some of that subject matter expertise up front. So with the digital twin and creating the digital twin of your sales team, and that's a great way to really get that deep subject matter expertise before even going out and doing any of the research, and that's going to be a great basis. So can you explain, first of all, what a digital twin is for people who aren't in the manufacturing space, and then talk about how that relates to your content creation
Okay,
strategy?
so the digital twin is, in the manufacturing sector, is a digital recreation of a product or a manufacturing process. So people will create a digital twin if they want to prototype a new machine, or if they want to test new materials and see how it affects the process. So along the lines of what we're talking about, is we really started to focus more and more on manufacturers. We ran into the concept of the digital twin, which we hadn't heard before until we really got into manufacturing. And then naturally, my marketing, light bulb goes off, and I'm like, wow, wait a second. This applies to sales and marketing, because manufacturers
Mm.
are traditionally sales oriented companies. And the reason why is because, like you said, long sales process, complex products, multiple audiences that they're trying to reach in different languages. And so, it's just been easier to hire the technician, give them a sales title, and send them
Mm.
out to the golf course, or go to the trade show. Well, the digital newcomer, as we refer to the internet and social media, means that upwards of 70, I think Gartner estimates that 80% of the sales interactions are going to take place online by 2025. That's not that far off.
Wow.
So, you need to get those salespeople off the golf course and off the trade show. I mean, they need to be there, but you need to get that presence online. So when I heard the digital
Absolutely.
twin, I said, oh, this is obvious. You need to make a digital twin of your sales team and use content to recreate them. And that's how we came
Mm.
up with it. And the more we kind of dig into that concept, the more we see it has like multiple facets, like we hadn't really considered. Like, for example, the idea that in sales, people will only do business with you if they know you, like you, and trust you. Well,
Mm.
same applies to content. People, first of all, you can create content to get people to know you, and that is content that talks about their problems, like we were discussing before. And then you can create more content to get people to like you by giving them like tools such as checklists or templates or product configurators or calculators on your website. It's like a neighbor giving you a ladder. He gives you a tool, you really like that guy. And then
Absolutely.
the third thing is case studies. That's the trust you content, where you really explain. It's your social proof, right? You've got someone, you're showing tangible, quantitative or qualitative results, or you've got on your website where you have some data that holds up to your marketing claims, units of quality. Like, you don't just say we deliver quality. You actually demonstrate it by, how many units you've built defect free, things
Hmm.
like that. So that's kind of the digital twin and the approach that, how it translates into sales and marketing.
So it sounds like you can have if you have a small sales team, they can stay on the golf course and they can stay at the trade show booth, but they keep doing their work online because even without them there, the digital twin of them is doing work online even while they're busy about the important sales activities that need to be
Yeah. And
done.
I mean, I think we're seeing more and more salespeople starting to bring themselves online, for example, with LinkedIn, and finding new ways to network and build their referral network on LinkedIn, and using social media as a means to not generate direct leads, but build that referral network that brings in the leads. And that's an important distinction. And I think once we sit down, like when we sit down with a sales team, for example, and we give them LinkedIn training, it's very hands-on. We don't, we used to give them the PowerPoint that explained how to do it, and they'd be snoozing by halfway through. Whereas now we get on, we have them share their screen and their LinkedIn profile, and then we show them how to actually connect with people with their messaging, how the value of leaving comments, how you can build your network just by doing that. And suddenly it's not some kind of like just random posting on Facebook like, what are you doing today? It's a really tangible way to exchange information and build your network to get set referrals. And I would say those referrals, when we're talking about long sales cycle, whenever we get a referral, it usually closes in a month and a half. Otherwise, we have these really long sales cycles like everybody else. And that's a secret weapon with like LinkedIn and networking. And, that's your digital twin in action.
Strategic Marketer is brought to you in part by Thrive Themes. Thrive Themes is a killer visual WordPress editor. They've also recently launched editable themes so that you can edit every element of your WordPress theme. You can create amazing landing pages that are beautiful and conversion focused. They've built all of their products around helping you convert more leads into customers. You can find out more about Thrive Themes by clicking the link in the show notes. Absolutely. Yeah, and I totally agree with you on that. I'm a huge advocate of LinkedIn, and I definitely agree. I mean, I think the salesperson of the future, I was kind of making a little bit of a joke there saying they could stay on the golf course. But yeah, I mean, I think in reality, in the future, it's not going to look like that too much, especially the more that there's remote work and remote teams. You don't really have that ability. And I think a lot of companies have realized that you can get a lot of the same deals made virtually that people were spending a lot of money and resources to get people on the ground. And then the sales guy, instead of being on the road, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
5 days a week and then being home on the weekend, now they can be home with their family and still getting the same deals
Yeah.
done. But then you have to actually build that relationship still.
Yeah.
And you can do that online, and you can do that through building personal relationships with people. I'm totally on board with that. I think that the salesperson of the future probably looks a lot more like marketers look like today in a lot of ways, creating some content and and being active in online in different areas and sharing their expertise, and then building relationships with people that way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the relationships are always going to be there, and are always going to be key. I mean, you get somebody to raise their hand, and then the relationship takes place, and that's not going to go away. And in fact, it's even easier now with Zoom, and you can get anywhere, meet anybody, so much faster. So I think that if you're in sales, like really, unless you want to be away from home, it behooves you to get into this digital space where you're making the connections that way.
Absolutely.
By the way, I just
Yeah.
want to say, it's hard to really be a tough guy when you're drinking out of a straw. I don't know if you.
Actually, that's kind of a nice segue into something I forgot to say, but something I think is important as a marketer, if you're going to be working with your more closely with your sales team and vice versa, is to have humility. And if you're going into a situation and you're dependent on the other person to do your job, and in sales and marketing, you both really are, it's so much better to take your ego hat off and talk to the other person and understand the true value that they bring. Because, like you're saying, without sales, there is no
Mhm.
marketing. But on the flip side, marketing done well is going to make your job as a salesperson
Right.
easier because this person already knows, likes, and trusts you before they ever get on a
Right.
call with you. I mean, how much easier is it if you get on a call with a customer and they are revealing all of this information because of the work marketing has done to build that rapport and trust with them before they ever got on a call with you?
That is so true, Joseph. And it reminds me of, I was on a call with a client one time, and I think it was asking, are we doing a good job? Are we making an impact here? And, beyond the metrics and things like that. And she said, one of the best things was when people used to call in, it would take an hour, and it would take an hour to, get someone to commit to an appointment. She said, now they call in and they're ready. They just commit right
Mm,
away. So you just to that point you made where, they're pre-qualified. I mean, those numbers aren't lying anymore. It's taking place online and they're ready for you. And now the critical work is for you to close the deal, to be the closer and to really share that in-depth expertise that you have, and answer their questions and provide that excellent service that just takes it to the next level. Because at a certain point, we all bail, right? We all jump off the chat. We all, opt out of the phone menu. We all click to the help button on the sales, unless you're buying a pair of socks online or whatever. But
right.
we want to talk to somebody. We
Yeah.
want to be sure that we're making the right choice. So I think you're exactly right that it's totally a win-win, and you have to do it right now. It's like really not an option.
Yeah. And just to kind of close out here, you were talking about creating the digital twin, and something that you talked about before in our conversation was how the know, like, and trust is kind of matching the marketing funnel. Your top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. So top of the funnel with know, you're sharing more general information that's kind of helping people to see that you're a subject matter expert in general in that space. And then the like factor is kind of bringing it down one step with adding something of value like calculators or things like that. And then trust is where you have your case studies and you're building the case that, hey, we're not a fly by night company. We're going to still be here tomorrow. Here's these established companies. We've done this before. And I really like that perspective of that know, like, and trust being tied to the levels of the funnel. But as companies are working to get alignment between sales and marketing. So if there's a company out there and there's a marketer and they want to have more alignment with sales and marketing and they want to start creating this digital twin. I know we touched on it a second ago, but I always want to leave people with what are some practical steps that marketers can take to understand their sales team better and then start to create that digital twin at their own company.
Again, to me, it really comes back to that marketing plan and building that. And we're working on a post right now where we're going to share the template for it. But I mean, to me, the first thing is to extend that olive branch and really just try and understand what their problems are. And you can both work toward understanding what your customers' problems are, but you as the marketer, you know, use that same psychology and that same approach with the sales team and find out what their problems are. Where are their sticking points? What do they need for support? And um, you know, a wise strategist once said to me that think of it as you're building up value credits, right? So if you're coming to the salesperson and you're always asking, can you review this? Can you give me input on this? You're taking. What can you give them right away? So if you find out right away, what's your pain points? How can I help you? Well, you know what? This PowerPoint stinks. Let's get on that right away. Okay, let's fix that. Whatever I can do right away to help you. And then you start to build up that value currency. And
Yeah,
and
that's
so
great.
you're not so much in debt to them. And so I guess I would start right there and, you know, practice what you preach and find out what your customers' problems are, starting with your internal customers.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point, and that's come up multiple times on the podcast so far. It seems like the good marketers understand that they need to be in alignment with their sales team, and I've really heard something very similar from multiple people about connecting with sales and talking with them, and I've seen that myself as well. So I totally agree that that's absolutely vital, and I think over the last few months and even through interviewing people over this podcast, I'm recognizing more and more that in the B2B space, as a marketer, half your job is marketing internally and half of it's marketing
Oh, yeah.
externally. And if you really want to get something done, your hardest customers are going to be inside of the company. And so you have to almost think of it in the same way as you would if I'm going to get buy-in from this, prospect, what are we going to do? We're going to find their pain points and their problems, and we're going to figure out the story, and we're going to use data and all of that. Well, you have to apply that same thing to your sales team. And if you start with the lowest hanging fruit, who's the salesperson that needs help the most, and maybe starting with them and building rapport, and then being able to show value and sell what you've done with them up the chain. But then also, like, if you want to get buy-in to do something big that's really going to move the needle for the company, you're probably going to need to get executive buy-in. So you have to understand what are the challenges for the executive team, and not think of it from your own perspective and what you want and what you're going to get out of it, but thinking from perspective of how is the CEO thinking about this, and what's the messaging we're going to need to use to get them to buy in.
Can I add something to that, Joseph? Okay,
Yeah.
getting buy-in from the company. And now you're a new dad, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So when I use this analogy, when a new baby comes into the family, families are a lot like companies, right? You work with at your company, you work with people of all, types of different people, but you're all bound together. You kind of got to be there, for your earn a living. In family, there's a lot of that too. You've got relatives and you got people that, if they weren't family, probably wouldn't be spending time together with them.
Right.
But, there's blood, right? And that brings us together. But what really brings the family together is when a baby arrives on the scene. When the baby comes, it's amazing. Like anybody from the gruff uncle will be there to hold the baby. People want to do anything to help the baby. It just kind of brings, at least was with my kids, I felt like it just really brought
Absolutely.
people together more than anything. And, they bring that baby into the room full of relatives and everybody lights up. And so what I say is to try and get buy-in, make your customer the baby. Okay. We're all going to try and help out and work together and figure out what the customer wants. And when you start talking about that, and that kind of brings everybody together, it shifts the operation, the focus from yourself and internally to an external thing, like the customer and the baby. So make the customer the baby, and from marketing, make yourself the customer advocate. Always take the side of the customer, and always, when you get pushback, let's find out. Let's find out from the customer. If we can test it digitally, let's get the answer there. If we got to call them and run it by them, let's do that. Bob, you got a great idea. Let's see what the customer says. When you make the customer the baby, it's amazing how it can really cut through all that resistance.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right now, my baby's 4 weeks old, and my baby dominates the family, right?
Yeah.
It's like everybody in the family has to put everything on hold to take care of the baby. And we have 3 other kids. So, it's like there's lots of things that they would normally get or get attention for or whatever, that they've got to put that on hold for right now. And they've done a pretty good job at understanding, okay, the baby's here, the baby needs our attention. So that is kind of a fun analogy, because it's like, okay, everybody put your own thing aside, your own challenge aside. Baby takes precedence for the next little while. And so I like that. That's pretty fun. Well, yeah, Greg, so you focus specifically on manufacturers. So I'd love for you to just take a second to share about what you guys do and how people can learn more about you and your
Sure.
company.
So thanks for that. Winbound is a content marketing firm. We like to work and we focus primarily on small marketing teams or no marketing teams, but somebody who has a sales and marketing function in their company. 1 to 3 people, even if it's just the sales director, and they know they need to get this digital twin presence out there. They know they need this online content to support their team. They just don't have the know-how or maybe the resources to produce the content, or again, they don't even have a framework like the digital twin to put it into play. And so that's what we do. We engage with those size companies and we use this digital twin approach to build that know you, like you, trust you content on the website. And then we bring in, think content plus marketing. We bring in the marketing to help distribute that content and get it out there through paid advertising, SEO, social, just the marketing tactics that we use to deliver content.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I'll definitely put a link to your website and your LinkedIn in the description. And if you're listening to the podcast, definitely check out Greg's LinkedIn profile. Also, he's always posting great stuff on there and active. So go follow him and keep up with what he's doing.
Great. Thank you, Joseph. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to The Strategic Marketer wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you could do me a personal favor and hit 5 stars on the rating, you don't have to leave a full review. Just hit 5 stars. It would really help me out. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Strategic Marketer.